So generally we invest at an early enough stage in most companies where we have exposure to both. So a standard safe with a token warrant, I'd say, is the most common deal structure. We do invest in equity-only businesses, businesses that will, like for example, stablecoin businesses that will never basically have a token if it's a stablecoin issuer. We do those investments, but we obviously see the power of tokens. And so that's certainly a lens through which we look at deals. Is there a token that can be useful here to help decentralize the infrastructure and provide additional layers of utility?
So I've always been interested in this is when you do have an equity and token mix, do investors ever get to realize the equity or ever care about the equity? Because the token is obviously liquid,
it's a great question.
Earlier stage. And I still think there's confusion. We've been looking at exponential age asset management about creating various kind of growth VC. And we've been looking at this equity and token thing saying, when does the equity make sense and when does the token make sense? Because I think a lot of people end up with equity that they'll never, ever realize, but they've realized the token a long time prior.
Yeah. So I think you're going to see, so I think to date, it's been hard to see examples where basically entities that issued tokens accrued significant equity value that was realized. Moving forward, I think that will change, and you actually will see more entities that accrue value to both the equity and to the token. Examples, DeepIn is a fantastic example of that, where you could have basically a token that could accrue, let's say, a portion of the fees generated from a network like HiveMapper or Helium, but then some other portion of the fees or revenue, goes to, call it, the equity-based labs entity, which may be, by the way, just one entity that sits on top of that protocol. So you have this mapping protocol. HiveMapper may own an entity that
like a foundation and a labs.
Exactly, a for-profit. But by the way, if these things get big enough and ubiquitous enough, there could be other for-profit entities that want to operate on top of the HiveMapper protocol. I'm not saying it's happening today at real scale, but I do see a future where that could happen. So when we evaluate deals today, we basically say, hey, we think this entity is worth this amount. And typically at the earliest stages, we're doing something like 1-to-1 tokens. So you'll put a valuation, a deal of $20 million and say, basically that entitles us to, equity at 20 million and token at 20 million. And we're not sure exactly how value will accrue to each of those.
But do you tend to think, even though you're offered token warrants plus equity, in your mind, you're probably thinking it's tokens plus I've got an option in the equity in case it's valuable?
I think it depends on the type of product. So, some of these decentralized exchanges we invest in, we fully expect that almost all the value will come from the token, and that's actually by design. In some of these infrastructure projects that we do invest in, the equity should essentially fade away, and that the community increases ownership over time in the form of a token, and that's the way we underwrite the deal. Then there's other deals like centralized exchanges. We, not to talk my own book, but just as an example that we're the most familiar with, we led the Series A of Cube Exchange, and they announced this past week at Breakpoint that they're decentralizing a portion of their net settlement infrastructure that's going to be governed by a token, right, and a decentralized set of validators. So there you still have an entity that has off-chain order books that's creating a lot of value for users, brand equity, et cetera, but the actual governance of the platform, of the settlement of assets on the platform, will be decentralized. And of course, the vision there is that this isn't just something of Cube, but that any client can go ahead and build on this architecture over time. So that's another example that comes to mind.
We hope you enjoyed the video. At Real Vision, we help you understand the complex world of finance, business, and the global economy with in-depth analysis from real experts. Join the revolution at realvision.com.